The Vanishing Mystery of Black Hollow. I'm not the kind of journalist who chases ghost stories. I deal in facts, concrete evidence, things you can touch, verify, print. But when the call came about Black Hollow, I couldn't resist. A whole town, empty, gone, its people vanished overnight without a trace. It was the kind of mystery that chewed at you, even if you didn't believe in the supernatural. Black Hollow wasn't much to look at. A cluster of homes nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, its population hovered around a modest 200. Picturesque, sure, but isolated. When I arrived, the streets were eerily quiet. There were no cars, no people, and yet, this is what sent a shiver down my spine. It felt lived in. Coffee mugs sat on tables. Clothes hung on lines. In one house, the water in a half-filled bathtub had gone cold, ripples frozen in time. "You're not going to find anyone," Sheriff Callahan said, his voice low and gravelly. He'd been the first to report the disappearance, though his tone suggested he wished he hadn't. "I've searched every inch. They're just gone." I asked about signs of struggle. None. No blood, no broken windows, no footprints leading out of town. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. Then there were the symbols. Carved into door frames, etched onto sidewalks, even drawn hastily in the dirt. Swirls, intersecting lines, shapes that seemed to shift if you looked too long. Callahan didn't like talking about them. "Kids' pranks," he muttered, but his clenched jaw told a different story. The local historian, Martha Greaves, was more forthcoming. "They're not pranks," she said firmly, her hands trembling as she sifted through old records. "They match symbols from an old legend about the Hollow Ones. Supposedly, they're, well, not people. They come for those who cross them." She wouldn't elaborate, only adding that the symbols were meant to ward them off. I'd heard enough folklore to dismiss it as coincidence. Yet, as night fell, and the darkness of Black Hollow crept into every corner, I found myself locking the door of the small inn where I was staying. It didn't matter that there was no one left to break in. The first real clue came on my second day. Down in the basement of the old town hall, I found a trapdoor covered in dust, almost imperceptible against the wooden floor. Beneath it, a tunnel stretched into the depths of the earth. It was lined with stone, ancient and damp, and the air carried a faint metallic tang. I should have called for backup, but curiosity is a powerful thing. The tunnel twisted and turned, opening into a cavern larger than I'd expected. In the center stood a stone altar, and around it, those same symbols. On the altar lay a book, its leather cover cracked with age. The pages were written in a language I couldn't read, but the sketches were clear enough. Spirals, figures disappearing into darkness, and the town. Black Hollow. One drawing depicted the symbols carved into a circle, surrounding a group of people. Another showed those same people, being taken, pulled into the ground by shadowy hands. Then I heard it. A whisper, soft, almost inaudible, but unmistakably real. It seemed to echo from every direction, growing louder as I turned to leave. The tunnel behind me was no longer empty. Shadows danced on the walls, moving against the light of my flashlight. I ran, tripping over loose stones, the whispers chasing me all the way back to the surface. When I emerged, the town felt different, still abandoned, but heavier, like the air itself carried a weight. Sheriff Callahan was waiting, his face pale. "You shouldn't have gone down there," he said. "What is it?" I asked, holding up the book. He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured to the horizon, where dark clouds were gathering unnaturally fast. The symbols on the buildings began to glow faintly, just as they had in the cavern. "They're coming back," he muttered. Before I could ask who, or what, he meant, the whispers returned, louder this time, rising to a deafening roar. The ground beneath my feet trembled, and for the first time, I believed the legend of the Hollow Ones. The last thing I saw before the world went dark was a figure emerging from the shadows, its shape twisting and impossible to define. It reached for me, and then... Well, that's where my story ends. Or maybe it's where it begins. Because if you're hearing this, it means I found a way to warn you. Stay out of Black Hollow.